Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Deku had met a cruel muse part 1. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see part 2, comment down below and let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content and leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story from Wattpad. So let's start the video. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 was seated at the vanity within her cabin. In the background her favorite song played, and although it was playing to calm her down, it was doing quite the poor job. You see, the girl had been attempting to do something with her hair. Quite the tedious task too. She was trying to get the front of her hair to swoop back down, the same way it had been the day before. But for some inexplainable reason, it was going terribly wrong. She couldn't understand why today was so different. It refused to stay in place. This was supposed to be a break from the stress of her profession, but if anything it was only adding on to it. It took about 2 more tries, but she got it. It was in place. The girl knew for a fact it wouldn't move after all the product she'd used to secure it, and she'd be if it did. With her hair finally sorted, she could now dress and head over to the poolside. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 had a specific swimsuit in mind, the one her mother had given her before she embarked on her sea journey. According to her mother, it was something that would bring a son home for her to finally meet. Yet, it was ironic, considering she was the same woman who had warned her against talking to any unfamiliar men while away. The swimsuit was a black bikini, an unusually tiny one at that. It had a lot going on. She'd definitely have to use a swimsuit cover to keep some things hidden before she got to the pool. Attention was the last thing the girl wanted right now. This was a getaway. No spotlight, no fans, nothing. After getting dressed, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 grabbed her purse and meticulously checked its contents, ensuring nothing essential was left behind. She was determined to avoid any need to return to her cabin. All her essentials were in her bag, eliminating the need to return to her cabin until it was time to leave the pool. She deemed her hair perfect and made a mental note not to get it wet under any circumstances. Her phone was also fully charged, which meant she could make any calls if necessary. That should have covered everything. She off the speaker and slipped on her favorite designer sandals. Everything was set, but a vibration from the vanity halted her in her tracks. It turned out to be her phone, the very device she would have left behind had it not been for the incoming call. She picked the phone up to investigate who the incoming caller might be. It was none other than her childhood friend. "Hey Mina," she greeted. "I'm already at the pool. Get here." No. She hung up after the brief words. How sweet. Meanwhile Kirishima was on a mission. He perched on the balcony, overlooking the indoor pool room not too far away. His task was straightforward, to scout out attractive girls for Denki. For the enticing price of $75, Kaminari had persuaded his friend to engage in what he would consider to be quite the unseemly act. There was a catch, however. The catch was, if he didn't approve of the girl, he wouldn't give Kirishima any money. The girls Kirishima had spotted thus far were all right, but he wasn't willing to chance it. He knew all too well about Denki's mind games and how he would find any excuse to lowball him. Hence, he aimed to find a girl there would be absolutely no debate about. It was taking a long while, but it's in those moments of doubts that things begin to take a change. It must have been his lucky day because it finally happened. He spotted a girl who was the perfect fit. Although it was taking longer than expected, it's often in moments of doubt that things start to shift. And that's just what happened. He spotted a girl who was the perfect match. He put his binoculars down. Whoa, any thoughts about Denki was completely thrown to the back of his mind. He had to go see this for himself. Before departing, he needed to ensure his vision was accurate. The prolonged exposure to the sun might have played tricks on him. 𝗵𝗃𝗲, he called out to his friend, seeking a second opinion. 𝗵𝗃𝗲 brushed him off and resumed whatever he had been occupied with before. Frankly, he couldn't have been less interested in what Kirishima had to say. Kirishima persisted, saying, "Just take a quick look. Right down there." He handed 𝗵𝗃𝗲 the binoculars and pointed to the girl by the pool. With pure annoyance, he grabbed the binoculars from Kirishima. "If this isn't worth it, I'll kill you," he muttered, glancing toward where Kirishima had indicated. Needless to say, what he saw was more than worth his time. 𝗵𝗃𝗲 grinned. "Let's go. He handed him back his binoculars and made his way towards the pool. I don't know, dude. If you're planning to make a move on her, I might as well tell Denki. That way he'd get paid, and standing out there all that time would have not been a complete waste of time. Kirishima realized he should have probably stayed silent, but it was too late for that now. Bakugo grabbed him by the collar of his shirt and pulled him along. That wasn't a question, asshat. They made it down the ship's staircase and went to approach 𝑦/N. It was mostly only Bakugo. Kirishima was just observing from a safe distance for moral support. At least, that had been the initial plan. However, in the blink of an eye, a green figure at full speed collided with the girl, sending them both tumbling to the wooden deck of the boat. 𝑦/N was but mostly confused. Considering the force of the collision, she should have hit the ground hard, possibly even striking her head in the process. However, she felt no pain whatsoever. Instead, her fall seemed to be cushioned by something, or rather, someone. In the final moments of their descent, Deku swiftly flipped the two over using his quirk, ensuring he bore the brunt of the impact. And boy, did it hurt like hell. Ouch, the green-haired male groaned, clutching the back of his head. 𝑦/N sat up, positioning herself with her knees on either side of his hips. She hadn't yet had a clear view of the clumsy fool who collided with her. But when she finally did, her gaze only intensified. "Where the hell are you rushing off to?" were the first words out her mouth. Deku hesitated to open his eyes. Perhaps she would leave if he didn't acknowledge her, especially considering the harshness in her tone. Why did it seem like misfortune always found its way to him? He couldn't help but ponder. The young man stuttered. Upon hearing his own words, he mentally chastised himself for stuttering, a habit he thought he had overcome years ago. Taking a deep breath, he sat upright. "I'm in a rush to meet some friends," he stated, then opened his eyes. They were close, faces almost touching, and his cheeks flushed as he took in the appearance of the girl he had collided with. 𝑦/N got off of him after noticing how non-confrontational he seemed to be about the whole situation. However, Deku remained still. He sat there, gazing up at her with what appeared to be a stunned expression. The red hue on his pale face deepened. "I'm sorry for standing around like that, my mistake." She reached a hand down to help him up. He took her hand and stood up, not letting go afterwards. Now was his chance. This is what Denki had been training him for all these years. He had to do something, anything. Don't stutter, eye contact, confidence. Whatever the hell he told him. "My name's Izuku, Midoriya Izuku. What about you? Do you have one?" he questioned. Deku couldn't help but mentally scold himself for the simplicity of his question. Of course she has a name, jackass. Who doesn't have a name? Looked the man up and down. "No," she replied. "I don't have a name." The woman found the interaction to be quite amusing. Normally the guys she bumped into were either too old for her or just unattractive. But this one was neither of the two. Despite her reluctance for attention from strangers, she'd make an exception for him. "Oh." Deku arched an eyebrow, skeptical. "You're joking, right?" he inquired, needing reassurance. "What do you think?" she asked in return. "I'm pretty sure you are," he stated, about 98% certain. "You have a name," he said confidently. "May I have your name, please?" He tried a new approach. 𝑦/N laughed softly. "Yes, I do have a name." Normally, she wouldn't engage in such exchanges, but the boy intrigued her. "But whether or not I should tell you, I'm not too sure." She looked him over while biting her lips slightly. She just checked him out. He watched her do it. There was no denying that she was at least somewhat interested in him. "I know you will, though." He grew bold. 𝑦/N yeah. "And what makes you so sure?" "For starters, I just saved your life. So I think you owe me now." He took that as his chance to finally let his eyes travel over her body. He wasn't even bothered by the fact that she caught him looking. Everything about her was intoxicating. No matter how much he tried, he couldn't find a single flaw in her. 𝑦/N watched as he blatantly checked her out. In fact, she even took it upon herself to do a full 360 degrees so he could get a better view. "If you wanted to look, all you had to do was ask," she teased. "Looking wasn't a problem at all. I mean, if you take pride in something, then you should show that something off, shouldn't you?" Well, it just so happened that the young lady took pride in her body. So much so that she had no problem with him wanting to look. Whoa, Deku couldn't help his small outburst when his eyes fell on what was behind her. He tried to play it off, and pretend he wasn't even looking at it, but it was already deathly obvious. I caught you looking already, don't try playing it off now. She shot him a glare. Sorry. He quickly apologized. You're the one who turned around. He called her out. She gasped dramatically. Are you trying to call me an attention 𝗲𝗏? Not fully hearing what she had said, he quickly formed a response. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm -- wait no. Before he could finish, 𝗬/N turned away from him and walked off. There goes her plans for the week. /N stormed off, not even bothering to hear him out. That's not what I meant. Midoriya watched as she walked away. Damn it, he cursed himself for slipping up like that. They were getting somewhere too, he could feel it. But no, he had to call her an attention 𝗲 for showing him her butt. What the hell is wrong with him? Sure, he hadn't heard what she was saying until after he agreed, but it was still his fault. Deku desperately wanted to chase after her, but he knew that wouldn't do him any good, and to make matters worse, he still didn't get her name. He chased after her anyway. 𝗬/N saw the greenhead trying to catch up with her, so she started walking even faster. He had his chance, and she wasn't the type of girl to give out seconds. Unfortunately for her, she wasn't fast enough, or maybe he was just abnormally fast. Nevertheless, he caught up right away. Deku stepped in the front of her to stop her from walking. I'm sorry, he flashed an apologetic smile. That's it. I'm sorry. That's all he could come up with. I don't forgive you. 𝗬/N folded her arms around her chest, bringing Deku's attention to her cleavage. He brought his eyes back up right away. Well, what do I have to do to prove that I'm sorry? She thought for a while. She didn't forgive him yet, but she was hungry. Buy me lunch. This Midoriya person seemed like a pretty well-off guy, so she was sure he has some change to spare on a good cause, which was a sad girl's stomach. She saw the hesitation in his eyes, so she continued to butter him up. Or are you not as sorry as you claim to be 𝗧𝗂? Deku was backed into a corner. If he told her no, that would only make him look like even more of a JRK. He had no choice. Yes, I am very sorry, whatever your name is. She rolled her eyes at Izuku's sudden passive aggressiveness. Whatever your name is. She began walking in the front of him, signaling him to follow. My name can be whatever you want it to be, buddy. Buddy, he questioned. Did she just demote him or something? Or was that simply just him making progress? He didn't want to ponder on it too long, so he started analyzing the other contents of her statement instead. Your name could be whatever I want it to be. Yes, she clarified. That's what I said. Feeling a sudden surge of confidence, he caught up to her a little bit, so they'd be walking side by side. In that case, your name is Midoriya? Oh, she hummed. Is that not your name though? 𝗬/N played dumb. Yeah, but I don't mind sharing, he continued with his attempts at flirting. 𝗬/N laughed to herself. He knew nothing about her, not even her name, yet he still agreed to take her out. What if she was a villain, or worse, a serial killer? Do you flirt with every girl you met not even an hour ago? She mused aloud. Izuku froze, and she took that as her chance to continue. So it's true then. I'm not special. She placed her other hand over heart to fake offense. It wasn't true at all, but Midoriya decided to play along with it regardless. Yes, but I don't buy them food. So you are special. What about you? Do you always go out with guys you met an hour ago? Deku shifted the blame. Oh wow, she didn't expect him to be so sharp on the mouth. I take that as a yes. Midoriya pressed on. So I suppose I'm not special. Don't be a PP Izuku. *+. *Iku sat there internally panicking as he watched 𝗬/N enjoy her 5-star meal. Iku sat there internally panicking as he watched 𝗬/N enjoy her 5-star meal. When she asked him to buy her food, he certainly didn't anticipate her choosing the most expensive restaurant on the boat. 𝗬/N peered down at his empty plate and single glass of water. Are you not going to order anything, Izuku? Deku shook his head. No. I ate already. Here, she reached her glass out to him. Drink this, it'll make you feel better. Deku was suspicious of her offer, especially since it was so out of the blue, so he smelled it first, and immediately returned the glass back to her. "You're not supposed to be drinking that," he yelled. She giggled. "So, nobody's going to know." Deku was not amused with her at all. "Give it here." I frowned before taking another sip from her glass. "You're going to have to take it by force, and dare I remind you, my quirk is lethal." It wasn't. Without bothering to listen to the woman, he swiftly grabbed the glass from her and signaled a passing waiter to return it. "Could you bring her a juice or something, please?" "Thanks," he requested before the waiter disappeared to make the exchange. "Lethal?" He laughed at her. She understood he was covering the cost of her meal, but it irked her that he confiscated her drink. Who cared about drinking laws, anyway? Was he some kind of law enforcer? She'd be if she waited until she was 21 to drink something she could have now. It made no sense to her. To make things ever worse, he it with a Capri Sun. AF Capri Sun. "You're really starting to piss me off, Izuku," she hissed at him. He raised both his hands in surrender. "Hey, I'm just looking out for you. Can't kill me because I care, now can you?" That's exactly how people die. Meddling in affairs they don't belong. 𝗧𝗏 and Deku finished their meals. Well, 𝗧𝗏. Deku drank his water. Once they were done, they began walking to the pool area. Well, that was the initial plan, however, unexpectedly, Deku swiftly pulled 𝗧𝗏 into a nearby corner, urging her to remain silent and avoid making any sudden noises. "I'll explain later, but for now, could you, 𝗬𝗧𝗏?" Bakugo's voice boomed throughout the whole boat. 𝗧𝗏 had no clue who 𝗪𝗑 was, but she was sure it had something to do with the boy who was forcing her to hide with him. "Izuku, why are you hiding from him?" She kept her voice down. Bakugo was only getting closer, and Deku didn't feel like confronting him right now. "I already saw you walking this way, Dip." Bakugo continued searching for him. "𝗬𝗑 has some loose screws." Deku replied to 𝗧𝗏. "Why the hell are you hiding from me?" He only grew more angry. When she could hear he was getting much closer, 𝗧𝗏 pushed Deku out of the corner with a sly smile. "Don't be a PP, Izuku," she mouthed to him. Deku and Bakugo collided with each other, catching both boys off guard. Shortly after, 𝗧𝗏 made her presence known too, eager to witness whatever event was about to unfold. Deku looked more than annoyed at both 𝗧𝗏 and Bakugo. "What the hell do you want? What the hell have you been doing with that girl?" His voice was angry and he was pointing at 𝗧𝗏. Before Deku could explain to him that he hadn't been doing anything with her, 𝗧𝗏 took his hand and placed it on her butt cheek. "Yeah, tell him, Izuku." She purposely added fuel to the fire. Bakugo grabbed Midoriya by the collar of his shirt and forcefully shoved him against a nearby wall. "You just can't control yourself, can you?" His voice echoed angrily as a crowd started to gather. 𝗧𝗏 was confused as to why he was upset with Midoriya, but she wasn't done just yet. Things were just starting to get interesting. "Izuku baby, are you going to let him talk to you like that?" She continued instigating the situation. The poor boy was beyond confused. 𝗧𝗏 was acting like they were a couple, and Bakugo was about to beat his butt. He didn't even know why. "You know her or something?" Deku began looking for answers. 𝗧𝗏 was starting to think they were lovers or something. Maybe Izuku got caught cheating, and that's why the blonde man was so upset. But that wasn't her problem, no one told him to cheat. "Next time you get in my way, I'll kill you." He was referring to the fact that Deku got to 𝗧𝗏 first and not him. Midoriya, however, was completely oblivious to this fact. Bakugo released him, and the crowd started dispersing. He hadn't intended to harm him. For now, he would simply leave him with a warning. Confusion filled 𝗧𝗏's expression as she glanced at Midoriya, who responded with an equally clueless shrug. It seemed like the two were beginning to resolve their issues, but 𝗧𝗏 wasn't entirely content with how things unfolded just yet. Bakugo started walking away, and when he was far enough, 𝗧𝗏 took that as her chance. "Zuku, are we still going back to your cabin like you promised?" The blonde stopped in his tracks, having accidentally hurt her. "Are you trying to get me killed?" Deku seethed. "You'll be okay, She smiled at him mischievously. He knew exactly what she was trying to do. 𝗧/𝗵 initially thought it was all in good fun until she witnessed the blonde pivot and rush towards Izuku, flames flickering, and smoke billowing from his hand. Oh, that was definitely not safe, nor was it in good fun. 𝗧/𝗵 gave Midoriya a shoulder tap to gain his attention. He needed to calm his buddy and fast. Deku sighed. Move, he muttered, sensing that Bakugo's actions were likely an attempt to show off. But he wasn't about to let himself be beaten just so his friend could impress a girl. 𝗧/𝗵 observed as a sort of green static, or maybe even an electricity of some kind, began to emit from the man's body, which seemed to be equally, if not more, unsafe. There was this nagging suspicion that Midoriya didn't quite have the situation under control. I don't think I should, 𝗧/𝗵 hesitated. 𝗧/𝗵 regretted her role in escalating the situation. If they ended up fighting here, it would result in serious damage. Additionally, someone would have to cover the costs of repairing the boat, and she certainly wasn't going to be the one to do it. Plus, she was a bit bummed out that she wouldn't get to see who would win the fight, but for the sake of the innocent civilians, she'd intervene. Before Bakugo could get too close, 𝗧/𝗵 stepped directly in his path. At the speed he was going, it was near impossible to slow down, to stop his quirk, or to even change his course, so collision was certain. She reached her hand out and closed the small distance between them. An unknown force pushed him back, and disabled his quirk in the process. Complete cancel the ability to neutralize or negate the force or effect of someone else's quirk. Complete cancel the ability to neutralize or negate the force or effect of someone else's quirk. This was 𝗧/𝗵's ability. This quirk, however, was pretty useless against physical attacks, unless they were being charged up or something. The one thing she hadn't yet was nullifying the quirks of two individuals simultaneously, which is why Bakugo got the unlucky end of the stick and she chose to target him instead. Izuku and whatever the hell you're called, apologize to these people. 𝗧/𝗵 scolded the both of them, referencing the people on the cruise who were just trying to go about their normal lives. Why should I apologize if I was the one being targeted? Midoriya was the first to respond. Bakugo got up and brushed himself off. Go die. 𝗧/𝗵 couldn't help but observe the man's exceedingly violent demeanor. She realized she should have heeded Midoriya's advice from the beginning and remained silent. You can't go around telling people to go die, blondie. She glared at him. He made his way over to 𝗧/𝗵, completely ignoring Midoriya's presence. Why not? He inquired once he was face to face with the woman. 𝗧/𝗵 was unsure if this was an attempt to intimidate her, but she certainly wasn't fazed. While it might have worked on Midoriya, it was ineffective against her. Because it's offensive, she retorted, maintaining eye contact with the man. No, it's not. Bakugo clicked his tongue. Are you offended, dipshit? He questioned Deku, who didn't respond. He took the silence as a no. He's not offended. She continued to glare at him, but he only responded with a grin. Arguing with him was clearly pointless. Even // could realize that. Izuku, let's go. 𝗧/𝗵 walked off. Midoriya trailed behind her, disregarding the aura of hostility emanating from Bakugo. Why did you provoke him like that? He groaned. I warned you that guy isn't quite right in the head. I wanted to see for myself. Turns out Midoriya had been right. He wasn't quite right in the head after all. 𝗧/𝗵 gave him a pat on the back. Personally, if it was me, that would have never happened. I would beat his butt. But you're not me, so I suppose it couldn't have been helped. None of that made Deku feel any better. In fact, he was more offended than anything else. I should beat your butt instead, he mumbled to himself. This could have all been avoided if she would listen to him. She seemed to get a kick out of causing inconvenience to him. Just because she was deathly attractive didn't mean she could just run all over him. 𝗧/𝗵 stopped walking, unsure if she had heard the boy correctly. Immediately he regretted his words. He hadn't anticipated her hearing that. It was more of a whispered reassurance to himself. Respectfully. Deku corrected himself before / had the chance to chastise or lay her hands on him. Respectfully. Surely he couldn't have been serious. Izuku. I'm sorry, woman, please, let's all just calm down. The man was visibly stressed. He had no clue what he had gotten himself into. This was all becoming too overwhelming for him. Perhaps it wasn't too late to just leave. If he had known this was what he was getting himself into, he might have reconsidered pursuing her. Woman. 𝗧/𝗵𝗃 took offense and Midoriya only grew more distressed. You refused to tell me your name. She couldn't get mad at him for that. So yes, woman. Deku pondered his situation carefully, contemplating his options. After much deliberation, he arrived at a straightforward solution: leave. If he moved quickly enough, he could escape from her and avoid dealing with any more of this. Hey! Don't you dare walk away from me! She exclaimed, chasing after him. Deku managed to make it all the way to the pool without sparing a single glance nor word. Not like she was leaving much room for conversation anyways, all the curses she was throwing at him. What did I do to you? Why are you bullying me, Izuku? Her voice softened. What the hell? Deku turned around in a panic. He didn't take her for the type of girl to get emotional over something like this. Are you _? Stopped her acting. Yeah, I'm fine. See, this was another reason why he was trying so desperately to get away from her. Don't you have other guys to go scout out? Why are you still following me? His tune changed to one of disinterest. 𝗧/𝗵 wasn't used to this kind of treatment, especially from guys, so it was extra upsetting. Perhaps she had pushed her luck too far with him. I'm not following you, we just happen to be going to the same destination is all. Same destination his butt. Just to make sure he wasn't jumping to conclusions, Deku walked over to the far end of the pool room. 𝗧/𝗵 did the same. Are you lost or something? He snapped. Don't be like that, Izuku. She looked away, too embarrassed to face him. My friend isn't here yet and you're the only other person I know. That wasn't going to cut it. She looked was doing perfectly fine before he bumped into her earlier. Well, my friends are already here, so I have to go. I'll see you around some other time. Midoriya tried walking off once again. She couldn't just let him leave her. They were practically the best of friends now. One doesn't simply just abandon their best friend. Wait, 𝗧/𝗵 grabbed his wrist. He stopped and looked at her expectantly. Don't leave, she mumbled. I'm sorry. Or whatever. Or whatever. He raised an eyebrow. Not or whatever, she corrected. I'm just sorry. The man wasn't enjoying her idea of fun, likely because it came at his expense. She acknowledged it might have been bothersome for him, so she decided to stop. Deku smiled to himself internally, but of course he couldn't let her see that. Sorry for what? He masked his emotion. For being a pain in the butt, she rolled her eyes. Denki tip number 2: if all else fails, reverse psychology is the way to go. It's like she was saying just what she knew he wanted to hear, and now that she was aware of her being a pain in the butt, maybe she could sort her attitude out somehow. That's my girl, he smiled. So what if her attitude wasn't the greatest? She apologized. They could probably work something out long-term. Iku was starting to feel confident about how things were progressing with 𝗧/𝗵. He had brought her along to hang out with his friends while she waited for hers to arrive. To his surprise, she was actually pretty well behaved. She wasn't talking back, insulting him, or trying to manipulate anyone. It was going super well. Or at least everything was going super well. Up until Mina showed up. Turns out she was the one 𝗧/𝗵 was waiting for. He was taken aback by the fact that she knew Mina in the first place, but upon careful consideration, it all started to make sense. Once Mina arrived, 𝗧/𝗵 reverted to her usual self, leaving him behind to join her in the pool. He wasn't keen on the idea of letting her run off like that, especially since she had mentioned not knowing anyone else on the ship. However, she assured him that she would return shortly. 5 hours had passed since then, and 𝗧/𝗵 never returned. It was even dark out now. Deku started to get worried, so he took it upon himself to go with a couple of the guys and search for her and Mina. When he did find 𝗧/𝗵, however, he really wished he just minded his own business and kept waiting. The pool room was vacant aside from 2 figures huddled in the corner. She was making out with Mina in the pool. Like full-on tongue, hands in hair, hickey, hands-on but, making out, and boy was he what the F Deku was the first to say anything. That snapped the other boys out of their trance as well. Todoroki cleared his throat, gaining both of the girls' attention. Mina removed her hands from 𝗬𝗧𝗏𝗏 but cheeks and reverted her attention over to the confused boys. What do you guys want? She asked, obviously annoyed. Oh, hey Izuku. 𝗬𝗧𝗏 got off of Mina and waved the boy over. She couldn't quite place her finger on the reason he looked so angry though. Why do you look so vexed? Her eyebrows contoured as he drew closer. Deku reached a hand down to help her out of the pool. Get up. Let's go. 𝗬𝗧𝗏 interlocked her hand with his. I missed you Zuku, she smiled up at the boy. He could already tell something was wrong. This wasn't like her at all. He looked over at Mina, and she wasn't in any better of a position either. I think they've been drinking. Kirishima was the first one to come to a conclusion. I mean, just look at Mina, she's clearly wasted. Now that he mentioned it, it kind of made sense. It also made Deku feel just a little bit better about catching her making out with someone that wasn't him, even if it was a girl. They probably meant nothing by it. Just two friends kissing, right? Girls do weird stuff like that all the time. This was normal. This was completely normal. No, it wasn't. Wait, who gave you guys alcohol? The realization finally dawned upon all of them. This man came to the pool and gave it to us. He said she forgot what he had said. He said something. 𝗬𝗧𝗏, what did he say? Mina requested your input. 𝗬𝗧𝗏 ignored her and kept trying to bargain with Izuku. Please Izuku. It's cold in here. Who's 𝗬𝗧𝗏? Deku tried piecing together the small pieces of information he was given. Initially, he believed Mina had simply lost her mind and begun conversing with imaginary people. Mina groaned. You're asking too many questions, Midoriya. I'm sleepy. Wasn't that just helpful? Way to go, Mina. Let's go, Mina. I can't leave you alone like this. You can sleep with me tonight. Kirishima pulled her out of the pool. Deku, are you guys going to be okay? Todoroki questioned, referring to 𝗬𝗧𝗏. Yeah, we'll be okay. You guys can go. He let them leave. They took his word for it. And let the two be. She was with Deku, so if anything did manage to happen, she should be fine. Once the guys were out of sight, 𝗬𝗧𝗏 took it upon herself to pull him into the pool with her. They weren't in too deep, so he should be fine. The action caught him off guard, so he didn't even get the chance to realize what was happening until it had already happened. Drenched with water, he stood up in the pool. I'm really angry with you right now. You're not making things any better either, you know that, right? Deku tried his best to stay composed. I'm sorry, 𝗬𝗧𝗏 apologized. I told you I was cold. What does her being cold have to do with this situation? If she was cold, then maybe she should have gotten out of the pool. That's what a normal person would do. Because you were cold, you pulled me into the pool? He tried to make sense of the situation. 𝗬𝗧𝗏 wrapped her arms around him, laying her head on his shoulder, careful not to ruin her hair. Warm me, Izuku. It was a simple gesture, but Deku felt like he was violating her somehow. She was pretty much naked and clinging on to him, and to top things off, she was probably drunk too. Her body was on his body. He could feel her 𝗵𝘃𝗧 squishing against his chest, and all he could do was stand there. He looked down over her shoulder and immediately brought his eyes back up. This swimsuit was quite a sight for sore eyes. She could feel how tense he was, and assumed it was because he was still upset with her. Aren't your clothes getting heavy? Take them off. 𝗬𝗧𝗏 requested to bring his mind off of everything. Yeah, they are. He replied honestly. But I think it's best I keep them on. 𝗬𝗧𝗏 didn't like that at all. Don't you think it's fair though? You're the only one fully dressed. This was clearly a setup, but she did have a good point. To keep the girl happy, Izuku loosened her hold on him and removed his shirt. Are you happy now? 𝗬𝗏 nodded, tracing her hand over the strange lines on his biceps. Take your off too. I don't have any on, it's only fair. She continued manipulating the boy. Deku backed away from her. No, that's not a good idea. 𝗬𝗧𝗏 walked closer to him, running her hand down his wet chest. But are you embarrassed because it's small? She hummed. He figured just agreeing with her would give him a higher likelihood of getting him out of this mess. So that's exactly what he did. Yeah, so can I keep my on? She thought about it for a while. That doesn't matter. She insisted. Deku knew he should probably explain a bit more before she came to her own conclusions. It's just you kept touching me and pressing against me, and he didn't finish his sentence. I'm keeping them on. Deku was being so persistent and it only made the girl wonder. Touching and pressing up against him. Do you have a 𝗔𝗫𝗫, Deku? She pondered shamelessly. Iku was being so persistent and it only made the girl wonder. Touching and pressing up against him. Do you have a 𝗔𝗫𝗫, Deku? She pondered shamelessly. Izuku took a deep sigh. How the hell did she even realize? Was he making it that obvious? Or was that what she was aiming for this entire time? Yeah, I might have a 𝗔𝗫𝗫. He confessed. It wasn't something he felt ashamed of. Everyone experienced arousal now and then, especially in the presence of someone like her. If he wasn't hard, it would only mean that his, you-know-what, wasn't working. 𝗧𝗏 didn't see it as a major issue either. In fact, she kept taunting the man. I'm glad we can both agree that it doesn't matter. So can you take your off now? Being the only one cold and half naked in the pool wasn't sitting right with her at all. Nope. Can't do that. Just because she wasn't seeing the issue didn't mean there wasn't one. 𝗧𝗏 was all over him, and maybe if the circumstances were different he would be enjoying it. But as of the moment, they were walking a fine line. I'm feeling uncomfortable, she explained. I'm half naked and you're not. If you truly cared as much as you claim, you'd undress too. It's only fair. Aren't you all about fairness, Izuku? 𝗧𝗏 made a point. Midoriya found himself at a loss. On one hand, her request for fairness made sense, and accommodating her would indeed be fair. On the other hand, she could simply put on some clothes and get out the pool, resolving the issue entirely. This was really unfair to him, if anything. 𝗧𝗏 couldn't suppress the smile as she watched the boy start to undress. It appeared that he had resolved his internal conflict by choosing to accommodate her and her feelings. Izuku tossed his wet beyond the pool's edge, scanning the empty room to ensure they were alone. After he finished, she draped both her arms around his neck and leaped up, silently urging him to lift her. Deku caught on, and placed both his hands beneath her hips to help up. She then wrapped her legs around him for support. You're quite built, she hummed. I am. I like that, 𝗧𝗏 smiled at him. Deku smiled back before shaking his head and looking away. No, he gained composure. Don't flirt with me, he scolded the woman. 𝗧𝗏 used a hand to grasp the man's jaw and guide his face back to hers. Why not? She challenged. Because he looked at her. Because Deku couldn't come up with a reason. He couldn't focus at all actually. He was too caught up in looking at her and the way she was staring at him. It made him nervous, really nervous. Come closer, she whispered, and he complied, eager to hear her more clearly. Instead, the woman leaned in to kiss him. Something he hadn't quite expected. Deku turned his head to the side, diverting her kiss to his jawline instead. He was aware that 𝗧𝗏 was drunk, so he refrained from taking advantage of the situation, even if it was just a kiss. 𝗧𝗏 didn't take the rejection personally though. She knew exactly why he did what he did. Instead, she saw it as an opportunity to explore further, kissing down his jawline until she reached his neck. That wasn't very nice of you, Izuku, her warm breath fanned against him. I want you to apologize to me. He tilted his head to properly look at her. Not everything's about what you want. You ever thought about that? 𝗧𝗏 shook her head. Oh. I've never thought about it, and I'd prefer not to. She began making her way down his neck, attempting to leave a bruise or two. Deku didn't object to her leaving marks, although he probably should have. Tomorrow he might face questions about them, and fabricating a believable lie to explain them could be challenging. What if my girlfriend sees them? He lifted his neck some more so she could get better access. Deku desired to play with the girl's ego in a manner similar to how she would attempted to manipulate his. That didn't stop her. Then maybe she'll finally realize you're a piece of 𝗧𝗏 and leave you, she smiled against his skin. Then we can finally be together. His grip on her backside tightened. Her nibbling on his skin like this was only turning him on even more, and there was no way for him to relieve himself. 𝗧𝗏 pretended to think for a while. I don't date cheaters, she came to a conclusion. This wasn't working for her. She wanted to feel something and Izuku wasn't letting her. No kissing, Nothing. The only thing she had going for her right now was the tight grip he had on her, but probably trying to restrain himself from doing anything else. Gradually, she pressed against his 𝗵𝗃, moving in a grinding motion to alleviate some of her SXL tension. Midoriya tried backing up as much as he could to stop the friction. But his back was against the wall, both literally and figuratively. The man couldn't help but question why he allowed himself to get into this situation in the first place. It could have been easily avoided if he hadn't been so passive. "You don't want to help me, Izuku?" she coaxed, waiting for a reaction. Midoriya was doing his best to compose himself. He had to stand his ground. He couldn't fall victim to the woman's schemes. Despite his resolve, his grip on her behind tightened. "No, we can't do this right now." His words conveyed one message, but his actions told a different story as he unconsciously drew her body even closer to his. "We can't." 𝗬𝗏 went up close to his ear to query directly. "And no," he stammered, feeling her nibbling on his ear. "Not even kiss." She was still directly in his ear, taunting him with that soft voice of hers. Deku shook his head no. "Say it," 𝗬𝗏 continued to entice the man. "Say no." He didn't say anything. She was waiting. Deku prayed for someone to come to his rescue, a security guard with a flashlight, a lost grandma wandering in, anything. He couldn't endure this agony much longer. It was impossible. "I want to kiss you, Izuku," she hummed. "Can I kiss you, Izuku?" She kept saying his name over and over. This, Izuku that. It was too intense, too overstimulating. She hovered over him like a serpent in his ear. There was only so much one man could handle. "Please," she added on. His willpower was slowly slipping away. "I don't kiss and tell." 𝗬𝗏 could see the man was beginning to consider. "Do you?" Midoriya looked around before answering. "No, no as in you don't kiss and tell, or no as in no we can't do this?" she inquired. "I don't kiss and tell," he clarified. 𝗬𝗏 smiled in response to his answer. She got him. "Wait, no, no, you can't kiss me." Deku was praying that somebody come save him, but that seemed to not be happening anytime soon. He'd simply have to save himself. "Fun's over," he declared as he tightened his grip on her, then turned around to lift her out of the pool before doing the same for himself. Time to go. He had let things play out much longer than they should have. The both of them were soaked and half naked, thanks to 𝗬𝗏. "You're a handful, you know that, right?" Deku dressed himself in his wet clothes while 𝗧𝗏 remained seated, watching him with a blissful smile. After he finished dressing, he glanced at her with a puzzled expression. She was still there, smiling at him. What? He didn't see the reason why she was so giddy. "It's not small," 𝗬𝗏 finally spoke, not bothering to pick up her gaze. Midoriya didn't even entertain the thought. "Where are your clothes?" He wanted to dress her in something more comfortable so she wouldn't have any reason to complain. "My room." Her answer was short and not helpful in the slightest. "Which room?" Midoriya pressed for clarification. He needed more information to assist her effectively. "The one I stay in." She still wasn't giving him much info to go off of. "Can he walk you there then?" Midoriya his approach. "Oh, I don't know you." Midoriya took a huge sigh. "You're kidding." Well, if that was the case, then he could just send her off on her own. Surely she was capable enough. "You should call it a night. Go back to your room and shower, get changed, all that stuff." He gave her a word of advice. "No," she refused once more. "Pardon?" Midoriya wasn't following. "What do you mean no?" "No. I'm not going." "So how will you do?" It was starting to get late. She was drunk, and it would be an absolutely terrible idea to leave her on her own. Especially dressed the way she was, and in the condition she was in, not to mention alone with the other men on the boat. He could trust himself, but others, not so much. Dunno yet. 𝗬𝗏 hadn't thought that far ahead. Have fun. It was starting to become clear to him that he'd have to take things into his own hands. "Get your things, let's go." Deku would watch over the woman until she fully sobered up. There would be no more fun for her tonight. As promised, Deku fulfilled his commitment of looking after the woman by bringing her to his place. While she wasn't particularly keen on going, she also didn't express a longing to return to her own place. It might not have been what she thought she wanted, but she wasn't in the right headspace to determine that as of now. So he took her defiance with a grain of salt. Midoriya carefully guided the woman into his room. The smell of chlorine still lingered on their damp clothes. 𝗧𝗏 stumbled slightly, and Midoriya caught her. "Hey, let's get you settled," he said softly, helping her to the bed. She mumbled something incoherent. Her words were too slurred for him to understand anything she was saying. Midoriya gently eased her down onto the mattress, making sure she was comfortable. "Do you have any dry clothes in your bag?" he asked while glancing at it. It was clear she was in no state to change herself though, so that might have been a problem. She shook her head slowly, eyes half closed. "No, everything's not laundry," Midoriya frowned. He was worried about her catching a cold. "All right, I'll figure something out." He spotted a clean towel on a nearby chair and gently draped it over her shoulders. "This should help for now." 𝗧𝗏 shivered slightly, still damp from the pool, and Midoriya realized he couldn't just leave her like this. He stepped into the bathroom, finding another towel which he used to pat her hair and face dry as best as he could without making her uncomfortable. "Thank you," she murmured, her eyes fluttering open for a moment. She looked at him with a soft, drunken smile. "You're really sweet." Midoriya blushed slightly but smiled back. "It's no problem. You just need to rest and stay warm." After a quick assessment, he realized she was just in need of some time to sleep off the alcohol. However, he decided he needed a quick shower to refresh himself before he could attend to her needs. As he slipped into the bathroom, he couldn't help but feel a bit flustered. The situation was awkward, to say the least. He'd never had a girl, drunk, in his room like this before. The sound of the water running gave him a moment of clarity, allowing him to focus on what needed to be done next. He washed quickly but thoroughly. His mind was racing with thoughts of how best to handle the situation when he returned to the room. Emerging from the shower, now clean and slightly more composed, Midoriya grabbed a spare blanket and a glass of water. He gently covered 𝗧 with the blanket, hoping to keep her warm and comfortable. He made sure she was properly covered with a blanket, tucking it around her to keep the chill away. He then pulled a chair next to the bed and sat down, watching over her to ensure she was okay. "Do you need anything else?" he asked, his voice gentle. 𝗧𝗏 nodded her head weakly, already drifting off to sleep. "Just stay please," Midoriya nodded, understanding. "I'll be right here. Get some rest." 𝗧𝗏 shifted under the blanket, fighting off sleep. She looked at him, her eyes pleading. "Izuku, I'm still so cold. Can you cuddle with me? Just to keep me warm?" Midoriya hesitated, his face turning a deep shade of red. He wanted to help her, but he was also mindful of boundaries. Seeing her shiver, he made a decision. "Okay, but just to keep you warm," he said softly. He carefully climbed onto the bed, lying down beside her. He wrapped his arms around her and felt her body relax against his. "Is this all right?" he asked quietly. 𝗧𝗏 nodded. "Yeah. Thank you, Izuku." They lied there in silence. The room was filled with the sounds of their steady breathing and not much else. Midoriya kept his embrace gentle, his heart was racing but his mind was focused on making sure 𝗧/ing was comfortable but most importantly, warm. 𝗧/n. He spoke. The woman hummed in response. Midoriya recalled Mina mentioning the name at the pool, leading him to deduce that it belonged to her, even though she never explicitly stated it. "That's your name?" Midoriya queried for clarification. "That's my name." Gradually, he felt her breathing slow as she finally drifted off to sleep and her body was no longer shivering. Midoriya lied there, listening to the gentle rhythm of her breaths, but his mind was still racing. After some time, he gently extricated himself from her embrace, careful not to disturb her slumber. He quietly returned to the chair by the bed and sat down, keeping watch over her. He knew that he needed to give her space to sleep off the alcohol, but he also wanted to be there if she needed anything. Maybe an hour or two passed him by before he felt his eyes growing heavy and he eventually dozed off in the chair. When he woke, the first rays of sunlight were filtering through the curtains, casting a soft glow over the room. He glanced over at the bed and saw 𝗧𝗏 still sleeping peacefully. Deciding it was time to prepare for her awakening, Midoriya got up and went to the kitchen. He brewed a pot of tea, thinking it might help 𝗧𝗏 feel better when she woke up. As he set the cup on the bedside table, he noticed her beginning to stir. 𝗧𝗏 opened her eyes slowly, blinking against the light. She looked around, momentarily disoriented, before her gaze settled on Midoriya. "Good morning," she said, her voice hoarse but clearer than the night before. "Good morning," Midoriya replied with a gentle smile. "I made some tea. How are you feeling?" "I'm all right, thanks," she said, sitting up slowly. She took the cup of tea Midoriya handed her and sipped it gratefully. "Why are we in your room?" She was a tad bit confused about the situation. "You were pretty out of it last night," Midoriya explained. "I thought it would be safer for you to stay here." Taking a deep breath, she swung her legs over the side of the bed and attempted to stand. Her body protested, muscles sore and still sluggish. She glanced down and noticed she was still in her damp swimsuit, now covered in several towels. The memory of Midoriya draping them over her to keep her warm came back in fragments. The smell of chlorine was faint but still present, a reminder of how she'd ended up in this state. Putting a hand up to her hair, she realized it was a tangled mess. She grimaced, feeling self-conscious about her appearance. Taking a deep breath, 𝗧𝗏 decided she needed to freshen up. She steadied herself against the bedpost. As she moved, one of the towels slipped off her shoulders and fell to the floor. Midoriya came to her rescue, gently picking up the fallen towel. "You can use my bathroom to shower and get cleaned up," he offered. 𝗧𝗏 hesitated, feeling a bit embarrassed. "Thank you, Izuku. But I don't have any clothes to change into." "Don't worry about that," Midoriya replied with a reassuring smile. "You can borrow something of mine. It might be a bit big, but it'll work." She thought about it for a moment. "Okay." She saw no reason to refuse his offer. Midoriya showed her to the bathroom and handed her a fresh towel. "Take your time. I'll find some clothes for you." As 𝗧𝗏 stepped into the bathroom and closed the door, she took a moment to look at herself in the mirror. Her hair was a tangled mess, and the chlorine had left her skin feeling dry. She turned on the shower, letting the steam fill the small space. Meanwhile, Midoriya rummaged through his drawers, looking for something that would be comfortable for 𝗧𝗏 to wear. He pulled out a pair of sweatpants and a loose t-shirt, hoping they would suffice. After 𝗧𝗏 finished her shower, she wrapped herself in a towel and opened the bathroom door slightly, peeking out. Midoriya was waiting just outside with a pair of sweatpants and a loose t-shirt in his hands. "Here you go," he said, handing her the clothes with a gentle smile. "Thank you, Izuku," she replied, taking the garments and closing the door again. As she unfolded the clothes, she realized with a pang of embarrassment that there was no underwear included. She bit her lip, feeling awkward about having to ask. Taking a deep breath, she decided to be straightforward. Opening the door just a crack, she called out, Izuku?" Midoriya turned around, concern flashing across his face. "Yes, 𝗧𝗏. Is everything okay?" She hesitated. "I just realized I don't have any, underwear. Do you have something I could borrow?" Midoriya's face turned beet red. "Oh, I'm really sorry, I didn't think of that." He looked flustered but quickly recovered. "Let me see what I can find." He disappeared into his room for a moment and returned with a pair of boxer briefs. "These should work for now," he said, his voice a bit shaky. "They're clean, I promise." 𝗧𝗏 took them and laughed a little at his awkwardness. "Thank you, Izuku. I appreciate it." "No problem," he said, trying to sound casual but still visibly blushing. "I'll wait out here." She closed the door again and quickly changed into the clothes, the boxer briefs fitting well enough under the sweatpants. The oversized t-shirt was comfortable, and despite the unusual circumstances, she felt much better being in clean, dry clothes. When she emerged from the bathroom, Midoriya looked up and smiled when he saw her. 𝗧𝗏 was well aware that her hair was a mess and she wasn't appealing in the slightest as of the moment. "Like what you see." She laughed. Deku nodded, not at all fazed. "You're really pretty. Even after putting up with her advances for an entire night, he still found himself getting flustered. 𝗧/𝗵 noticed there was something now playing on the TV in his room. Curious, she walked over and stood beside him. "What's that?" she asked, peering at the screen. "Oh, I'm playing a game with a slow, deliberate movement." 𝗧/𝗵 innocently placed herself on his lap, and it temporarily stopped his thought process. Her body was pressed against his. "What are you playing?" she repeated, her voice softer, almost a whisper. Midoriya felt his heart race. His body was tensing at the unexpected closeness. "Grand Theft Auto," he replied. Deku was pretending that her sitting there didn't faze him in the slightest. He had put the controller down to temporarily check something on his phone before she came over, and now he didn't want to risk reaching forward to get it in case she might move. The warmth of her body against his was intoxicating, and he was hyper-aware of every slight movement she made. "Can you reach that for me really quick?" he asked, trying to sound casual but failing to hide the nervous edge in his voice. 𝗧/𝗵 leaned forward slowly, her movements deliberate as she reached for the controller. The action pressed her closer against him, and she could feel his breath hitch. 𝗧/𝗵 noticed all his reactions and realized she might be coming on a bit too strong. It was likely overwhelming for him. She handed the controller to him, then started to get up to give him some room so she wouldn't limit his movement. To her surprise, Midoriya gently but firmly stopped hers. Hand gripped her waist to pull her back onto his lap. "Plus, you can stay, I don't mind," was still on Izuku's lap, her small hands eagerly reaching for the game controller. Midoriya had been playing for a while, and she had been watching with fascinated eyes. He decided to let her give it a try. It couldn't have gone that bad, right? Wrong. Instead of following the usual missions or exploring the landscape, 𝗧/𝗵 went on a rampage. He sat there, watching in stunned silence as she went on a virtual murder spree, knocking down innocent civilians and stealing random cars she thought looked nice. The man watched in disbelief as the screen filled with scenes of mayhem. Characters ran in terror, cars swerved, and alarms blared. 𝗧/𝗵 seemed entirely engrossed in her spree. Her face was lit up with a mix of concentration and glee. He was hoping this would be enough to get rid of whatever built-up animosity she had. Because obviously there was some, judging by the way the first thing she did when she got the controller was start killing people. 𝗧/𝗵. Izuku tried to interject gently, but she was too absorbed in her actions. "You're on your 5th start," he noted with incredulity creeping into his voice. Perhaps the first 4 stars weren't enough for her. Well, one thing was for sure, her killing spree was definitely coming to an end. "I think they're about to kill me," she said nonchalantly, her focus unwavering. "What type of corrupted system is this?" She ranted. Just because she killed a couple of people, they sent helicopters and SWAT teams after her. "It's because I'm a woman, isn't it?" she muttered as her character finally succumbed to the relentless onslaught of law enforcement. The infamous wasted sign popped up right afterward. Izuku froze. "No, 𝗧/𝗵, it's because you were committing genocide?" She was about to retort but stopped short as Izuku put an arm around her waist, pulling her closer to the center of his lap. "Maybe you should play another game," he suggested, trying to divert her attention. 𝗧/𝗵 handed the controller back to Izuku, signaling she was done. "Have you seen my phone anywhere?" she asked suddenly, realization dawning on her. She had paid good money for that phone, and if it had been stolen, all hell would break loose. Deku wanted to jumpstart the girl's heart a little bit, so he told her he hadn't a clue where it was. 𝗧/𝗵 sprang off his lap in a panic. "You're kidding?" "Nope. But did you lose it or something?" He played dumb. "No, it ran away," she retorted sarcastically. "Now get up and help me look for it." Izuku wasn't too keen on the idea. "What exactly am I getting from this?" he asked, hoping to strike a deal. 𝗧/𝗵 thought for a moment. "Aren't you supposed to be a hero?" she shot back, catching herself before offering anything. "Get your butt up." "Fair point. Try calling it," he suggested, tossing her his phone. He had enough faith in her reflexes to trust she wouldn't drop it. 𝗧/𝗵 caught his phone and began dialing her number. "This is a dumb idea." "Why would my phone be?" A ringtone interrupted her. Deku silenced the girl with his finger and reached into his pocket, taking something out. Hello, he grinned at 𝗬𝗏𝗏, holding something that awfully resembled her phone to his ear. Not sure how to react, she stood there trying to process what the hell just happened. You gave me all your things last night? Deku returned the girl's phone to her. And now you have my number, so call me anytime. 𝗬𝗏𝗏 rolled her eyes. Izuku, next time you want something, just ask. She would have had no problem giving him her number. He nearly gave her a heart attack. Yeah. Like your name. He reminded her of the time he had asked, and she refused to tell him. In 𝗬𝗏𝗏's defense, she thought their interaction would be short-lived. That was back then, this is now. That was literally yesterday, Izuku deadpanned. Yesterday was a long time ago. What was he not understanding? What do you want me to save you as? She changed the topic. Deku picked up his controller, throwing himself back onto the bed to lie down on his back. It doesn't matter, anything is hero boy from Cruise. She cut him off, the sound of loud typing following her words. The boy momentarily froze. Preferably my name, he responded, realizing it did matter after all. Which one? You have a lot, pressed, wanting to hear which name he'd prefer she use. Izuku. Nobody ever used his first name, and he found himself enjoying the fact that she would. 𝗬/. Joined the boy on the bed once more. This time she slowly dragged a hand down his chest and gently straddled him since he was lying down. Do I make you nervous, Izuku? Pride, lowering her voice for him so it would be more welcoming and warm. Deku raised an eyebrow at her. No. Truth be told, it was all an act. Midoriya was scared shitless on the inside, forgetting everything Denki and the guys had taught him. She found it cute that he was still trying so desperately to protect his pride. 𝗬𝗏𝗏 giggled softly, leaning closer to Deku until their faces were inches apart. Her breath was warm against his skin, and she could feel his pulse quicken even more. 𝗬𝗏𝗏 smiled down at him. Then why's your heart beating so fast? Is it? He replied, trying to maintain his composure even though his voice wavered slightly. Leaned closer, her lips hovering just above his. Are you sure you're not nervous? She whispered. Izuku swallowed hard, his eyes darting from her lips to her eyes and back again. I'm sure, he stammered, cursing himself for the slight quiver in his voice. She giggled softly, her fingers tracing light patterns on his chest. You're a terrible liar, Izuku, she teased, her eyes sparkling with mischief. I'm not lying, he protested weakly, trying to maintain some semblance of composure. She hummed, her voice dripping with playful skepticism. Then why are you blushing? Izuku's face heated up even more. I'm not blushing, he insisted, though he could feel the telltale warmth spreading across his cheeks. Moved even closer, her lips brushing lightly against his, barely a whisper of a touch. You're so cute when you try to act tough, she murmured as her lips curled into a sly smile. Deku's breath hitched and his heart in his chest. I'm not trying to act tough, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. She pulled back slightly, her eyes locking onto his. Is that so? She asked, her tone both challenging and flirtatious. Then what are you trying to do? I don't know, he admitted, feeling completely out of his element. 𝗬𝗏𝗏 laughed softly, the sound like music to his ears. You can relax. I'm just teasing you, she said, her voice gentle now. He exhaled, not realizing he had been holding his breath. You're really good at it, he admitted. I know, she replied smugly before leaning in again, this time pressing a soft kiss to his cheek. But thanks for watching me last night. Izuku's heart fluttered at the touch of her lips on his skin. You're welcome, he managed to say, his voice a little steadier now. She settled back, still straddling him, and gave him a knowing look. You can't handle a bit of teasing. I can handle it, he said, trying to sound confident. I'm just not used to it. Maybe you need more practice then. 𝗬𝗏𝗏 teased some more. Maybe, he agreed, swallowing hard. Are you volunteering to be my teacher? That's the spirit, she said with a grin, her fingers now playing with the hem of his shirt. So, where were we? Something about my heart beating fast, he suggested. Right? she nodded, leaning in again, her lips once more hovering tantalizingly close. Want to see if we can make it go even faster. Iku was beginning to understand that spending time alone with 𝗧/𝑛 in his room might not have been the best course of action. 𝗧/𝑛 was incredibly touchy. He lied back on his bed with his mind racing and his heart. The room seemed to grow smaller more and he, "You're all tense again," called him out while gently grazing his arms with her fingers. "You've got to relax, Izuku." He swallowed hard. "I'm trying." Izuku's thoughts were mixtures of confusion and longing. He wanted to reciprocate her touches, to let himself go, but he didn't know how. He looked into her eyes, searching for some kind of reassurance. He couldn't tell whether she was serious about this or just teasing him again. "You want me to do something?" His voice trembled, sounding both shaken and scared. "Like touch you?" He whispered the last part as if he was saying something he shouldn't have been. Realizing he wasn't quite ready yet, 𝗧/𝑛 got off of him and stopped pressuring him. "It's okay," she said softly, offering a reassuring smile. She could see the conflict in his eyes, the way his body tensed under her touch. She knew pushing any further wouldn't be fair to him. "Never mind." Izuku felt a wave of relief wash over him. He had been so worried about disappointing her, about not knowing how to respond to her advances. But here she was, backing down. It was definitely a weight lifted off his chest. "I have to go back to my cabin now," she laughed at his timidness. "You coming?" He shook his head. "Can't, I have to shower." That and the fact that he had to deal with some newfound personal issues the woman had brought on. After hearing his refusal, 𝗧/𝑛 began gathering her things. "Well, I'll call you later then." "Thanks for watching me," she smiled. Midoriya sat upright to show her the way out. "Yeah, anytime." Once 𝗧/𝑛 was finally gone, Midoriya let out a sigh and ran a hand through his hair in frustration. He couldn't shake the feeling of regret as he replayed the interaction over and over in his mind. How stupid could he be? Why would he ask her that? In the heat of the moment, his nerves got the best of him, and he found himself frozen, unable to act on his feelings. Cold feet and fear were the only things holding him back. The woman practically threw herself at him, and even then, he was still at a loss for what to do. Izuku wasn't used to these kinds of interactions, and he felt overwhelmed by the intensity of it all. While he appreciated 𝗧/𝑛's advances, he couldn't help but chastise himself for not being able to reciprocate as he wanted to. As for 𝗧/𝑛, she was in her cabin making herself comfortable and following through with her daily morning routine. One in which was particularly tedious. She looked in the mirror for the second time this morning and scorned at her appearance. It was unbelievable how Izuku still managed to find her appealing early in the morning like this. She was about to get settled in when suddenly, out of nowhere, an incoming call came through to her phone. It was Mina. "Good morning, 𝗧/𝑛." Mina got straight to the point. "Did you sleep with Midoriya last night?" /𝗧 was temporarily stunned by the question, mostly the bluntness of it. Why was Mina asking about her sleeping with Midoriya? What could have possibly given her that impression? "I doubt it." 𝗧/𝑛 denied the allegations. "Why?" Mina couldn't think of anything else the two could have been doing all night. "He took you back to his place, didn't he?" That's what she was told at least. "He did." 𝗧/𝑛 followed along with her storyline. "But he's shy, I think." Deku had avoided her like the plague the entire night. "So then why weren't you answering my calls last night?" Mina moved on to more important issues. "He had my phone." "I don't know." As far as the woman was concerned, nobody had called her at all last night. "We just fooled around a little bit, but I was drunk." "We didn't do anything," 𝗧/𝑛 assured. "Even when I made a move on him this morning, he was still being weird about it." "What did you do to him?" "Why was he being weird?" Her friend couldn't see any logical explanation to why Midoriya wouldn't play along. "No clue, but he was scared, so I left him alone." Mina narrowed her eyes, not entirely convinced. "Scared? Of what?" 𝗧 shrugged, feeling a bit perplexed herself. "I think he's just not ready for that kind of thing yet. Or maybe he's just not into you," Mina suggested bluntly, earning a scowl from 𝗧/𝑛. Sorry, Mina took her words back. I'm just trying to make sense of all this. Mina sighed, shaking her head. That boy needs to get it together. He missed the opportunity of a lifetime. Well, just make sure he knows you're interested, Mina advised. He'd probably come around eventually. 𝗧𝗏 was pretty sure she did a great job at showing him that she was interested. Maybe even too good of a job. I think he got the message already. Probably got performance anxiety then. It was Mina's last logical explanation. Midoriya was most likely hesitant because of his lack of experience with physical intimacy. So, what's my next move? 𝗧𝗏 took a liking to the man and wanted some help on how to go about it. After all, Mina was also friends with him. What better way to gain insight than to simply ask? No clue. Good luck figuring that out though. Mina hung up. So much for asking a friend for some advice. Who did you sleep with last night? Mineta blurted out, practically bouncing on his toes in excitement. Kiri told us all about it, Denki added, looking strangely proud. Kirishima. Deku thought. What did he tell you? He hoped it was just a misunderstanding because he didn't sleep with anyone last night. He was with 𝗧/𝗏 the entire night. Oh, I did sleep with someone last night, but not in that sense. I didn't sleep with her, he clarified, though he knew who he was talking to, and that his explanation would likely fall on deaf ears. But it was too late. His words only seemed to ignite their imaginations further. It's barely been a day on this boat, and Deku's already racking up all the babes. Mineta began to drool, his perverted tendencies still very much alive. Deku sighed. After all these years, you'd think Mineta would have grown out of his perverted phase, but no. It never happened. I did not have 𝗧𝗏 with anybody last night, Deku said, more bluntly, hoping that would clear things up. I was with it. He hesitated. Was he supposed to call her his friend? I was with a person I met earlier. He figured that was the safest way to phrase it. Both Denki and Mineta looked disappointed, as if all their efforts to teach Deku the ways of the world had been in vain. Deku, Mineta said seriously, you get no beaches? Deku chuckled despite himself. It's actually the other way around, Mineta. You never get any because you keep calling them beaches. He's right, Mineta. You're supposed to call them young ladies, Denki chimed in, trying to sound more mature. So, what did you and this person you met earlier do all night? Because you were nowhere to be found, Denki pressed, clearly sensing there was more to the story. She was drunk, so I stayed with her to make sure she was okay, Deku explained. He then reminded them of the lengthy list of Deku-do's and don'ts they had drilled into him. Sleeping with drunk women was firmly on the do-not-do list, especially for a hero. Oh yeah. We did say that. Denki now looked proud, as if Deku had passed some sort of test. You did good. Mineta praised him while nodding approvingly. But did you want to sleep with her? Mineta asked, leaning in with a conspiratorial grin. Deku felt a pang of irritation but quickly masked it. Can we drop it? It's not like that. Denki and Mineta, however, weren't ready to let it go. They led him to a small diner on the ship, far from the crowds, so they could dig deeper into the mystery of Deku's night. They settled into a booth in the back, and their excitement was palpable as they waited for Deku to spill the details. So, what did you and this person do all night? Kaminari leaned in, eager for more. As Deku recounted the events of the previous night with his mysterious woman, their emotions swung wildly from disbelief to excitement. She wants you, Mineta said, nodding sagely. I don't know, man, that sounds tricky, Denki countered. He was starting to think that maybe the girl Deku was talking about was just playing around with him, a classic case of friends with benefits or a one-night stand. But one thing was certain, she'd definitely let you hit though. Midoriya shook his head. That sounds empty. He wasn't willing to settle for that. Isn't there something else I can do about it? Deku asked, sounding more conflicted. Denki thought for a moment. What's her full name? There was nothing the internet couldn't solve. Maybe they could check her social media and figure out what kind of person she was. I don't know, but her first name is 𝗧/𝗏, Deku replied. Denki and Mineta exchanged a look. The name sounded familiar, but they hoped it wasn't the same 𝗧/𝗏 that Deku was talking about. For peace of mind, they decided to ask. Her last name wouldn't happen to be 𝐿/𝗏, right? 𝗵𝗵𝗲 asked cautiously. Deku sighed, slightly irritated. I just told you that I don't know, he repeated, a bit more aggressively this time. Mineta and Denki were now more curious than ever about this mysterious girl Midoriya had spent the night with. Despite their teasing, there was genuine concern, mixed with their usual nosiness, about who she really was. Okay, Denki said, trying to think logically for once. So, we don't know much about this 𝗧/and girl. Let's do some digging, but we'll need more info. Yeah, like her last name, Mineta added. It's hard to search for someone with just a first name. Deku frowned. Isn't that kind of invasive? He didn't feel right about snooping around behind 𝗧/n's back. She could be anyone, Deku, 𝗵𝗵𝗲 reasoned, crossing his arms. We just want to make sure she's, safe. Mineta nodded in agreement, though it was clear his interest wasn't purely about safety. It's not like we're doing anything wrong. We're just checking things out. Deku was torn. On one hand, his friends had a point. They didn't know anything about 𝗧/and other than her first name. But on the other hand, the idea of prying into her life didn't sit well with him. Well, we could just call her and ask, Deku suggested hesitantly. Denki and Mineta exchanged incredulous looks. That's a terrible idea, Mineta scoffed. Who just asks someone for their personal information like that? You'd look so suspicious. 𝗵𝗵𝗲 added. Like, hey, what's your last name? No reason, just curious. 𝗵𝗵𝗻. Deku knew it sounded ridiculous, but he couldn't think of a better solution. But if we just ask her directly, she might tell us. It's better than sneaking around. You're gonna make it weird, 𝗵𝗵𝗲 muttered, but the resolute look on Deku's face told him there was no stopping his friend. I'm doing it, Deku said with a firm nod, pulling out his phone. He found 𝗧/n's number, took a deep breath, and hit call. The phone rang a few times before 𝗧/and picked up. Hey, Izuku, she greeted cheerfully. What's up? Hey, 𝗧/and, Deku stammered, suddenly feeling very nervous. I had a question for you. Okay, what's the question? Her tone was playful, but Deku could also pick up on the curiosity in her voice. Well, this might sound weird, but what's your last name? He blurted out, immediately regretting how awkward he sounded. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Why do you need to know? 𝗧/and asked, now sounding slightly suspicious. Deku panicked. Oh, well, I was talking to my friends about you and they suggested Googling you, but I realized I don't even know your last name, so I couldn't, and they thought it was important to check, but I wasn't sure, so I thought I'd just ask. His rambling was cut off by a burst of laughter from 𝗧/and. You're hilarious, Izuku, she chuckled. It's 𝗧/and. Report back to me if you find anything interesting. Deku blinked in surprise. Really? Thanks, I didn't mean to come off as... Don't worry about it, hun. She teased lightly. Talk to you later. And with that, she hung up, leaving Deku holding the phone with a dumbfounded expression. Denki and Mineta stared at him, their jaws practically on the floor. Did that just work? Mineta asked, incredulous. It did, Deku replied, still in a bit of a daze. Denki leaned back in his seat, shaking his head in disbelief. I can't believe that actually worked. You just called her up and asked. Man, you've got guts. I guess so, Deku said with a small, nervous laugh. Well, now we know her full name, Mineta said, shrugging as if this were the most normal thing in the world. What's next? Now we run that background check, Denki said, pulling out his phone again. What did she say her last name was? They couldn't hear. 𝗧/and, Midoriya repeated as he stared blankly into the distance. It was the same name 𝗵𝗵𝗲 and Mineta had questioned him about earlier. Surely that was bad and the background check was about to come back with gut-wrenching news. Denki pulled his phone out of his pocket and typed something in. After he was done, he turned the phone around and showed it to Midoriya. Is this her? Deku was confused at first, but when he saw the image on Denki's phone, his heart sank. It was her. He snatched the phone away, staring at the countless photos of 𝗧/and plastered across the internet. Who is she? He asked, realizing his friends knew something he didn't. A porn star. Mineta laughed. Denki jabbed Mineta in the stomach with his elbow. A model, he corrected, trying not to completely crush Deku's hopes. What kind of model? Midoriya asked, not appreciating his friends trying to sugarcoat the situation. A lingerie model, Kaminari admitted, then watched Deku closely to gauge his reaction. You ever read Playboy? Mineta added with a smirk. She was on the cover once. ND. Deku's voice rose in disbelief. No, not ND, Kaminari quickly assured him. She never goes ND, unfortunately. He whispered the last part to himself. Deku felt like the ground had just shifted beneath him. He thought he had found a pretty girl on the cruise, someone special, but he didn't expect her to be a famous model. He felt like his world had flipped upside down. He was probably just another guy to her. Sure, he was a famous hero, but he'd never been on the cover of Playboy. Now that Kaminari realized who Midoriya was talking about, he understood that Deku's chances of getting with her and staying with her were pretty slim, but not zero. There was still some hope, however small. Up his cell phone with a heavy heart, his fingers trembling slightly as he dialed /N's number. Denki and Mineta exchanged confused looks, unsure of what Deku was doing. Deku, what are you? Kaminari started, but Deku held up a hand to signal him to wait as the call connected. Hey Izuku, /N's voice chimed through the speaker, light and playful. Calling so soon. Did you find something interesting? Deku swallowed hard, his voice shaky as he responded, Yeah, I found a lot, actually. Oh, /N sounded intrigued. And how do you feel about it? There was a moment of silence as Deku steeled himself. He knew he had to ask, no matter how awkward it felt. I want you to be upfront with me, he said, his tone more serious than usual. /N giggled softly, a sound that was both comforting and nerve-wracking. Sure, I can do that. What do you want to know? Deku hesitated, then blurted out, Are you a porn star? Mineta and Kaminari immediately slapped their hands over their faces, groaning in unison. They couldn't believe Deku had just asked that outright. There was a brief pause on the other end of the line before /N burst into laughter. A porn star? Really, Izuku? Deku's face flushed a deep red, and he could barely bring himself to speak. Denki and Mineta said you might be, and I needed to know the truth. /N took a moment to compose herself, her laughter fading into a soft chuckle. No, Izuku, I'm not a porn star. But Deku's voice trailed off as he tried to reconcile what he had seen with what she was telling him. I'm a lingerie model, Izuku. That's all, she clarified gently. I've never done anything like that, and I don't plan to. Deku let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. I'm sorry for jumping to conclusions. I didn't know how to feel. It's okay, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 said reassuringly. I get that it's a lot to take in probably. Deku nodded, even though she couldn't see him. Thank you. 𝗬𝗲 replied, and her voice was awfully warm. And hey, if you ever have any more questions, just ask, okay? I'd rather you come to me than anyone else. His friends didn't seem to be reliable. I will. Goodbye. Talk to you later, hero, she teased before hanging up, leaving Deku with a mix of relief and lingering confusion. Denki and Mineta finally lowered their hands, looking at Deku with a mixture of disbelief and admiration. Well, that was something, Denki said, shaking his head. I can't believe you just asked her that, Mineta muttered, still trying to process what had happened. I needed to know the truth, and she told me. That's all that matters. Because if it was left up to Kaminari and Mineta, he'd never be sure. Denki turned to Mineta with an annoyed expression. Dude, seriously. Why'd you have to put that whole porn star idea in Midoriya's head? Mineta shrugged, looking unbothered. What? It's basically the same thing. She's a model who takes her clothes off. What's the difference? Denki face-bombed, shaking his head. There's a huge difference. She's a lingerie model, not a porn star. You can't just lump them together like that. Do you know how insulting that is? Mineta rolled his eyes. Come on, Kaminari. They're practically in the same industry. People still pay to see her in next to nothing. You think Midoriya's gonna care if she's posing in a bikini or less? Kaminari glared at him. That's not the point, 𝗵𝗏𝗳𝗏. The point is you made Deku think she's someone she's not. Now he's freaking out over something that isn't even true. How do you think he was supposed to handle that? You really messed with the man's head. 𝗵𝗏𝗳𝗏 crossed his arms, unimpressed. If he's that worried about it, maybe he shouldn't be hanging out with someone like her? Denki's eyes narrowed. You're unbelievable. It's not about who she is or what she does. It's about how Midoriya feels. And right now, you've got him second-guessing everything because you can't stop being a perv for 5 minutes. 𝗵𝗏𝗳𝗏 grumbled under his breath, clearly not seeing what the big deal was. Whatever. He'll get over it. It's not like she's his girlfriend or anything. Kaminari sighed. That's not the point, 𝗵𝗏𝗳𝗏𝗏. It's about respect, man. You wouldn't like it if someone made assumptions about you, would you? 𝗵𝗏𝗳𝗏 scoffed. Like what? That I'm short. Everyone already knows that. Kaminari shook his head, realizing the conversation was going nowhere. 𝗵𝗏𝗳𝗏 shrugged again, clearly not interested in a moral debate. Fine, whatever. Sorry, dude. Denki rolled his eyes, turning back to Midoriya, who was still staring at the phone. Hey man, he said gently, don't let it get to you. If you like her, that's all that matters. Deku nodded slowly, but the confusion and doubt lingered in his eyes. Yeah, I guess so, he murmured, still trying to process everything. As the trio sat in the back of the diner, Kaminari and 𝗵𝗏𝗳𝗏 leaned over Midoriya's shoulder, staring at the screen of his phone as they continued their deep dive into 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗏's online presence. She's got way more out there than I expected, Midoriya muttered, scrolling through yet another article. A sleek magazine cover popped up on the screen. 𝗬𝗏𝗏 in some avant-garde outfit, her sharp gaze peering through the glossy page. Kaminari whistled lowly, impressed. Man, she's a star. They did a full feature on her. Says here she's been modeling since she was a teen. 𝗵𝗏𝗳𝗏 snorted. Told you she's out of your league. She's got famous people crushing on her. He pulled up a gossip site that listed a few rumors of well-known actors who had allegedly shown interest. Look at this. Celebrities. Midoriya's stomach twisted. He wasn't sure why he had agreed to this. Searching through her life like a scavenger hunt felt wrong, like he was intruding on something deeply personal. But every piece of information only made him want to know her more. Forget the celebrities, Kaminari said, brushing 𝗵𝗏𝗳𝗏𝗏 aside. Check this out, Kaminari said, tapping the screen. She says here that she's all about abstract art, painting emotions rather than things. Sounds deep. Kaminari's finger tapped the screen. That's your way in, man. Find common ground. Deku nodded thoughtfully. He was trying to piece together what that could mean. He didn't know much about art, but there was something captivating about the way 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗏 described it. It was almost vulnerable, and that gave him a glimmer of hope. 𝗵𝗏𝗳𝗏𝗏, who was sitting across from them with a bored look, perked up when Kaminari scrolled to a photo shoot of her modeling for a high-end fashion brand. Whoa, look at this. He smirked. She's been in vogue. Dude. As much as Midoriya tried to ignore it, the sheer amount of public attention she received was daunting. There were blog posts breaking down her fashion choices, fan accounts dedicated to analyzing her outfits, and even gossip columns speculating about her relationships. Seeing her life laid out online like an open book, with every accomplishment, every admirer, every personal detail, made him really uneasy. I don't know, Deku muttered. All this stuff about her, it's just out there. It feels wrong somehow. Bro, you're overthinking this, Kaminari said before giving him a playful slap on the back. The point is, you have an edge. You're UA's golden boy, you've got fame, and you're trained in charm thanks to yours truly. He grinned, scrolling to an article about her art exhibitions. See this? That's something you can work with. Deku read over. The article, noting how passionate 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗏 seemed when talking about art. She described her process, how painting was a way to express what words couldn't. But 𝗵𝗏𝗳𝗏𝗏 wasn't as focused on the deeper aspects. Forget all that, he said, pointing to the gossip column yet again. Look, she's had athletes and pop stars chasing her. You really think you've got a shot against that? Deku's nerves flared again, but Kaminari waved 𝗵𝗏𝗳𝗏𝗏 off. That's all noise, man. Celebrities don't matter. You're Izuku Midoriya. You've got the advantage. She's into art, So find a way to make that connection. The rest doesn't matter. Midoriya let out a long breath. His eyes were still glued to the screen. He wasn't sure if knowing all of this made things easier or harder. Sure, they had plenty of information now. He knew her interests, her hobbies, and even a little about her past. But there was also the weight of her world, the people who admired her from afar, and the public nature of her life. Could he really step into that and stand out? He knew 𝗵𝗻 was right, or at least he wanted to believe he was. Behind all the fame, the public attention, and the speculation, 𝗧/𝗵 seemed like someone who valued real, personal connections. If he could get past all the noise and show her that side of him, maybe he'd have a chance. 𝗵𝗻 scrolled further. He stopped to look at a photo of 𝗧/𝗵 standing beside a blank canvas, but her silhouette was covered in the primary shades of paint. "There's an art studio on the lower deck," he said, looking at Deku with a grin. "Take her there. Paint something together. It's perfect. It's casual, low pressure. Plus, you've got the whole I'm a hero thing going for you." Deku glanced at the photo. He didn't know if he could even hold a paintbrush correctly, but the idea wasn't half bad. It was simple, personal, just the kind of thing that might resonate with her. "Yeah, maybe," he said, feeling a small spark of hope. 𝗵𝗻 gave him a pat on the back. "That's the spirit. Now you've got a plan. All you gotta do is ask her out." Deku nodded, feeling the weight of the situation settle on his shoulders again. The plan was there, but actually executing it, that was another challenge entirely. "Okay," Midoriya said. "I'm going to ask her out." Izuku fiddled nervously with the edge of a napkin as his mind spun. He didn't know much about 𝗧/𝗵, aside from what little he had gathered through his brief encounter and the bits of information Denki had just dug up. But he did know one thing: he wanted to impress her. But what if she's not into it? Deku muttered, doubting himself. Denki slapped the table. "Bro, you've got the best chance of anyone on this ship. She knows you're a good guy, and you're, like, famous. You've just got to show her you're interested. Right?" Midoriya nodded even though the nerves in his stomach didn't settle. Minato shrugged. "Or you could just back out and leave her to me. I'm not picky." 𝗵𝗻 punched Minato's arm. "Shut up, dude. You're not helping." Minato rubbed his arm with a scowl but stayed quiet this time. Deku took a deep breath. 𝗵𝗻 was right. He just had to go for it. There was an art studio they could paint together, and if things went well, maybe, just maybe, it could turn into something more. He reached into his pocket for his phone, pulling it out with trembling fingers. "Call her," Denki said firmly with his eyes locked on Deku like a drill sergeant. "I don't know what to say," Midoriya mumbled, glancing between the two of them. "Put it on speaker," Minato suggested, leaning in. "We'll guide you through it." Midoriya hesitated, then clicked on 𝗧/𝗵's contact and hit call. The phone rang once, twice. By the fifth ring, he was starting to sweat. Just as he was about to hang up, her voice came through the line, soft and playful. "Hey, Izuku," greeted, a hint of curiosity in her tone. "Sorry, I didn't hear it ringing. What's up?" Denki frantically gestured for Midoriya to stay cool. "Tell her it's fine," he whispered. "It's fine, don't worry about it," Midoriya said, his voice cracking slightly. "Do you miss me already? Why are you calling again so soon?" 𝗧/𝗵, her laugh floating through the phone. 𝗵𝗻 mouthed the words silently but with exaggerated gestures. "Tell her yes." "Why, I did," Deku blurted out, followed by a nervous chuckle that sounded anything but smooth. 𝗵𝗻 face-bombed, but Minato gave him a thumbs up. 𝗧/𝗵's voice softened. "Ah, that's sweet. So what's up?" Midoriya felt his mind go blank. This was it. The moment of truth. His heart in his chest, and he could feel both 𝗵𝗻 and Minato staring at him, waiting for him to make his move. He had to ask her. He just had to. "I was wondering," he started, his voice shaking. "Are you free for the rest of the day?" There was a pause on the other end. "Why do you ask?" she replied, intrigued. 𝗵𝗻 leaned forward, silently urging him to push through. "I was thinking," Deku continued, swallowing the lump in his throat, "maybe we could spend some time together. There's this art studio on the lower deck. I thought it might be fun to, paint or something." Kaminari and Mineta held their breath. This was the critical moment. I hummed thoughtfully. Are you asking me on a date, Izuku? Midoriya's eyes widened, and he shot a panicked look at Denki, who mouthed, say yes. I am. Deku blurted, a little louder than necessary. The other end of the line went silent for a heartbeat, and then y/nuffed, a sound that sent a wave of relief washing over Midoriya. Okay, sure, she said, her tone playful. What time? Deku looked at Kaminari and Mineta, desperate for guidance. They just shrugged. Now. He ventured. Now it is, she agreed. But just give me a sec to get ready, I can do that, Deku said. His nerves were finally starting to settle. He couldn't believe he did it. As the call ended, Kaminari and Mineta exploded with excitement, high-fiving each other and slapping Deku on the back. You did it, man. Kaminari cheered. You're in. Deku's stomach flipped. As soon as the call had ended, he slumped back in his seat, exhaling sharply. He did it. He actually did it. Kaminari fist-pumped the air. Dude. You nailed it. Mineta, surprisingly, nodded in approval. I mean, I still think she's out of your league, but you've got guts. Good luck, man. Deku smiled. He'd done it. Now, all he had to do was survive the actual date. No pressure.